Hey everyone, welcome. For today's art class, we're going to be painting Let It Snow, which I'm really excited about. The supplies that I'm using for today's class are I'm using acrylic paper to paint on. You're welcome to use acrylic paper, which can come in a pad like this, or you can use a canvas or a canvas board, anything works. I'm going to be using acrylic paints, so basic acrylic paints, nothing fancy. The colors are that I have on hand are red, yellow, and blue, black and white. The background color here, it looks black over our recording here, but it's a little bit navy blue, so you could do a black background or you could do a navy blue background, but a dark color of choice. And then we'll use red and yellow to make orange together. And then you'll use white and red for some of the detail work. For some of the brushes that I'll be using for today's class is a large or a 1/2 inch flat tip brush, and then I just have an array of some smaller tip brushes that I'll use for some detail work. So it doesn't matter what sizes you have, will be okay either way. You just need some smaller detailed brushes for the script and so the snowflakes. So I'm just going to grab these, and these will be perfect for today's class. Put them right over there. In addition to the paints and the canvas, you'll need a cup of water to rinse your brushes. And I always have a plate to mix colors. Sometimes I have a palette or just anything to mix colors on works just fine. Even if you're using acrylic paint, you can always use a regular plate too. It comes off no problem. So if you have any questions, please let us know. The orientation for your picture today can be vertical or horizontal. Now, since I did my original vertical, I'm going to do my second version horizontal just because, hey, why not? So I'm going to first start by painting the entire canvas a given color. Now I'm going to show you my plate, and I'm going to mix black and a little bit of blue together for my background. And I always have paper towel on hand too. But I want to thank you again for being here. If you're new to my channel, please hit the subscribe button. If you haven't already, it gets you notifications when I upload new tutorials and I post new videos about supplies and other kind of tips and tricks around painting. And I'll have more videos coming out in the new year about some new things as well. So there's a little bit of black on my plate. I'm going to take a little bit of blue as well. I love the idea of making a navy color. My background on my original came out a little darker than usual, so that's okay. Way too much blue paint just came out, but that's okay. We roll with things in these classes. So I'm here to remind you to not fret and just to show up, then always just do your best and don't worry about things too much. So I'm going to go ahead and mix a navy blue color here together. Always take your time by mixing colors that you like. Still pretty dark, which is fine. I do want this background to be dark colored, so I'm just going to do some nice smooth horizontal brush strokes. If you're new to these classes, don't be afraid just to go for it. There's no risk at this point in the class of messing anything up. So go ahead and put that paint right on your canvas, doing some nice smooth brush strokes. Long, smooth brush strokes from the left side to the right. You can manage how much paint you use. Acrylic typically dries pretty quickly. So always in these classes, take your time to mix the colors that you wish. Take your time in painting as slowly as you wish. You can always pause these videos as you get going if you need to spend more time on things. So I am here for you to take time for yourself, to enjoy some really fun, easy painting tutorials. I usually paint a lot of different things in my classes, sometimes seasonal, sometimes landscape, sometimes abstracts. We like to do a little bit of everything here. So if there's any themes that may come to mind for you, please let me know. I'd love to incorporate maybe some of your own ideas or what you might be inspired by in the future. So go ahead and take your time filling in this background. Now I teach 2 live public classes a month, And if you're interested in getting access to those live classes, my Patreon members have access to those live classes. The video tutorials will always be posted on my YouTube channel here, but if you're interested in participating in a live class, which is really quite fun, you're welcome to join us. I will put a link in the description below if you're interested in joining our Patreon community. It's a really fun, affordable, accessible way of joining a community of really fun ladies and gents of all ages to paint and unwind together. We like to keep things easy. We like to keep things fun. And we always welcome beginners. One of the fun things about our classes is that the more you paint, the more you figure out your own style. You get to know yourself a little bit better. And that's one of the more therapeutic parts of these classes, is just kind of like letting go of expectations, letting go of what you think your painting should look like. With a little bit of instruction, following your intuition, you're going to do just fine. And I've been teaching classes for over 7 years, and I can tell you that many of the students in my classes haven't painted in a very long time. But if you give yourself a little grace and you just let go of how you think things should go, you'll have a really good time. You'll have a really nice time. So the objective of this step is to paint the entire background. And I'm doing a little bit of blue, a little bit of black. My blue got a little out of control here. That's okay. I remind us to be really kind to ourselves, not take things too seriously. This is just the background. If you want this to be perfectly filled in, you're welcome to do 2 coats. It's not necessary. But doing some nice smooth brush strokes, sometimes having a little bit of extra texture is a good thing. But you can see mine's shiny because it's still wet. So I'm just going to work my way all the way down to the left and to the right side of the canvas. There we go. And if you're painting on a canvas board or on a canvas wooden frame, you're welcome to paint around the left and the right side of those edges. In a lot of my classes, I paint on 11 by 14 as a size. When you join, you can paint on any size that you wish. Sometimes in our classes, we paint on wooden boards. Sometimes we paint on canvas, we paint on paper. Sometimes we do watercolor, a little of this and a little of that. So I'm going to give this a minute to dry. And one trick I can share with you is I'm going to put my paint to the side. You can run your brush over your canvas. This is very little paint on it, but this will help to move around any wet paint, and that will help your canvas to dry a little bit more quickly. So I could just work my brush from the bottom all the way up to the top. Nice smooth brush strokes. And in the chat below, in the comments, I'd love to hear your level of experience and what you're looking to learn from today's class or why you're here. I always love getting to know folks while you're here with us. And if you wanted to put where you're from, that would be awesome. If you don't want to, that's okay too. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush. I'm going to give this a minute or 2 to dry. So go ahead and take your time. Again, we all paint at our own speed, so don't worry. But again, the basic layer that we're working on now is the basic background. And then we're going to be adding in snow and text and letters and our snowman after. But this is our inspiration for today. Sometimes getting a hairdryer out or waving things around to get it to be a little bit dry a little bit more quickly, that's always fine. But if you're using acrylic paint, it doesn't take too long. In addition to painting 2 public classes a month. I also teach team building classes for companies all over the US, so small and large groups, and I mail paint kits to individuals' homes for virtual paint classes. So I have a studio where I mail paint kits, which have easels and aprons and brushes and canvases, and actually have awards packages for events. So if you're ever interested in holding a private event for your friends or your family or for your team, definitely reach out. It's always so much fun doing that type of work, and I love giving folks an opportunity to paint when it's not there every day. And that's including you. Absolutely. So I'm going to give this a minute to dry. Again, feel free to pause the video if you need to. I have my water cup here. I've cleaned off my big brush. And as this is drying, I'm going to prepare my white paint on my plate. Now my plate got pretty messy. I'm just going to grab a new one. And that's going to dry right there. And I'm going to put a little bit of white paint on my plate for my snowman. And we're going to keep this class so easy. If you want to go about this class any other different way and just follow us along, go for it. I always love rule breakers. I always want you to do your own thing in our classes. So don't feel like you have to follow along like exactly that I'm doing. I always want you to incorporate your own ideas and go at your own pace. So I went ahead and put some white paint on my plate. And one of the ways that I was making tonight's class a little different is I'm doing my painting landscape. So I'm going to be putting the head down here and the hat on top, and I can decide how big I want my head to be. So when you're ready to start painting the snowman's head, join me. If you need a minute, feel free to pause the video and unpause the video when your background is done and dry. But I'm going to take my big brush, it's nice and clean, and I'm going to put a little bit of white paint on it. And I might put a little bit of water in here. Sometimes my white paint, this paint can be a little thick, so I like to just move it around a little bit. I'm preparing my brush for the work or the exercise. So I'm going to do a round head. It's going to be half on, half off. And I'm going to do it kind of off-centered because I'm going to put my text of Let It Snow kind of over on the left. So if you think about a composition perspective, if you're doing yours, more vertically, your head can be in the center, it can be off to the side, and then your text can be above. So you can decide where you want them where. But I'm going to just be brave and just do a snowman's head down here at the bottom. I'm going to make it a little bigger. A little bit bigger. And I'm just going to fill it in. Now with white paint on a dark background, you're going to need 2 coats. So just take your time, get in the outline of the head, and then you can work on your coats after. So we're just, in our classes, we do basic coverage, and then we go in and we add in additional detail after. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to use the flat side of this brush. You can turn your big brush on its side. Do a nice long smooth brush stroke. Make sure you have enough paint on your brush to have a nice smooth edge. Do some nice smooth brush strokes here. I'm going to let that dry. It's not totally filled in, but that's okay. It's not perfect. I'm going to do a second coat on top of that after. So now that I have like half my snowman's head in, I'm going to use a small brush and I'm going to outline the hat. So I'm going to use a smaller brush here. This is a round tip brush. It's a number 3. You don't have to use a number 3. I always just tell you just in case so you know if you wanted to use a 3 or not. I think a 3, 4, or 5 is fine. But again, use whatever you have. Small-ish style brush, so you have thin lines, that's fine. My white paint again is a little thick, so I'm just giving a couple dollops of water in here to loosen this up. So now we're gonna do the hat, which is really fun. The top of the hat can be kind of bowed or it can be straight across. So I'm just gonna do the top of the hat here. I'm gonna do it fairly straight. So that's the top of my hat. I can go and get a little more paint, and then my hat's kind of off-centered a little bit, and I'm just gonna come down. My hat is gonna be floating above the snowman's head. So that's the side of the hat, and then I'm gonna have a round brim. I'm gonna do an oval. Again, that's floating above the snowman's head. So an oval like this. So easy, you can do it. So just a hat with an oval, and then we'll add a little bit of 3-dimension to it after. If you want to re-outline these, feel free. And see how it's off the snowman's head. That's intentional. And if you wanted to do like a fun little band right here, you can. That's optional too. And we're going to do a little bit of a J on the inside of the hat. So down and curl. It's kind of like a long J. That's going to represent where the head would go on the inside of the hat. And these are really guidelines for us. You can do some nice clean brush strokes with your brush. If you paint something you don't like, don't worry. You can always come back in and refine. But we're going to be painting red on the inside of our hat. But just to show you what we're doing is I'm going to put a little bit of magic, a little bit of wind on the underside. So I'm taking my white paint and I added a little bit of water, and I'm just spinning this brush to have a nice fine point. I'm going to have 3 whooshes of curls come out from underneath the hat. And it's going to start on this J, and it's going to come out, and it's going to go whoop, 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 whoop. I'm just adding a fun little bit of swirl and curl. I'm saving room up here for the text. So if you don't want to add this swirling and curling yet, you don't have to, but we're going to add 3 lines coming out from the bottom of the hat. One's going to come right to the snowman's head, and then another one's going to come off to the right, and it's going to have a swirl and curl here. So it's creating a little bit of lift, a little bit of magic off the top of the head. And we might be painting over some of these lines, but this gives you a little bit of framework and structure for our composition. It will really start to come together for you. But we want these white lines to be nice and strong and white. So I'm going to let those dry. So again, sometimes in these classes we do a design and I'm going to do a curl down here too. We do an area, we let it dry, and we come back to it. So there's a curl here. It's going to come out by the snowman. It could be a curl or a swirl. How about that for fancy art lingo? All right, there we go. So I have just a fun, and I left some space up here for my text. Now, if you're doing yours vertically, you can see I did my swirls and curls down there. We're going to be adding snowflakes, and my text is across the top. So while my hat and my swirls and curls are drying, I'm going to come back to a second coat on my snowman because we want the snowman to dry so we can put our carrot nose on, etc. So my head was almost dry, pretty good shape. I'm just going to come in and do a second coat. If your head isn't dry yet, don't worry. You can always come back to it. But we're going to do a second coat on our head. Mine needs another minute to dry. I think some of my black wasn't dry underneath. That's okay. Just doing some nice smooth coats. I'll come back and add in more white after. So our goal for this step is to, if anywhere is dry, do a second coat. I'm going to wait for my hat to dry and all those lines to dry before I add any red in. So we have an option here of painting where it's dry, right? Doing a second coat of white, or we can paint something else as things are drying, which is a really easy thing to do. So if we wanted to do our text as an example, we could, like, let's let things dry. Let's not let get things, sometimes when you do a second coat and it gets smudgy, it's not always a good thing. But I want you to grab a small brush of choice. I'm actually going to grab a smaller brush. I'm not using any fancy brushes. I have small fancy brushes, but I love to make these classes really accessible for you, just in case you don't have any fancy brushes. But a small brush of choice for your text. And you can write "Let It Snow" or any text that appeals to you for tonight's inspiration. Now in the original I did like a cursive. You could do a cursive, you could do a block type font, you decide. I love being spontaneous. I love being spontaneous and just doing things with you in the moment. I can go back in once I just do some rough text to add a second coat. And I am not a calligrapher by any means. I do write in cursive though, which is funny. It's a lost form these days. Most of the time you can't read it though. So I just wrote "Let It Snow" up there. I'm gonna let it dry. And for the text to be nice and strong and bold, doing white coat, 2 white coats of paint is always recommended. Let's go nice and slow. You can see how doing a second coat on that text makes such a big deal. Big difference. And I can't wait to see your work. There is a place on our Patreon channel where you can upload your work, which is really fun. And I don't even think you need to be a paid contributor. I think you can just join it for free and share your work with us. So it's always fun to see how everybody's doing, especially at the end of class, to see your artwork. So I'm letting my hat dry. I'm letting my head dry. And I'll show you how to add some snowflakes while we're here. And having a small brush is a really good thing. If you want to spend more time on your text, feel free to do that. These snowflakes I'm doing are very straightforward. You can make them as big or as small as you want. I'm going to do mine fairly small because there's a lot of big objects on here. But I'm going to do a line down and a line over, like a plus. And then I'm going to do an X through the plus symbol. And then we'll put little dots on these after, like on the ends, and I have a trick on how to do that. So I'm gonna spatially put little snowflakes, and you can do them, and I'm gonna put little dots on here too, but I'm just gonna do a handful of these little snowflakes in different areas. So I did some on the left. I'm gonna do just a few over here on the right. And I'm gonna look and say, do I wanna add any other big snowflakes anywhere else? And I don't think I need to. One of the things you can do is you can add little kind of dotting like snowflakes. You can either use the round end of your brush, which is this part right here, or you can use your bristles and you can just do little dots. You can do like a 1-2 dot. And you can add as many or as few little snowflakes as you wish. And we're doing this as everything dries. So we're using our time wisely as our white paint dries. I like to do clusters of 1, 2, a 1, a 1, 2, 3. spacing them out, and then kind of pausing and stopping so you can evaluate how much snow you have going on. And you can stop with your snow and always go back and add more. That's absolutely fine. I'm gonna clean off my brush and we're just gonna let things dry. So I want you to outline your letters, do a second coat wherever you need to. I'm waiting for my head to dry. It was kind of wet down here, so I'm just gonna give this a few minutes. I am gonna go over any of these curly cues. So everybody's gonna have different amounts of paint. Yeah. I'm going to use different amounts of paint. Everybody uses different qualities and different opacities. Sorry for the interruption. If you could hear my 5-year-old, he was very curious on what we were painting tonight. You're going to do a second coat wherever you need to visually. I like doing it around the rim of the hat. But we're going to be filling in the hat soon as our next step. And we'll be doing our carrot nose as well. So again, feel free to pause the video if you need to take a little bit more time in one area or another. But we're all doing the same thing. We're all working our way around and we're refining these white details, right? We're refining the white details. And we'll target to do our hat next, just in case anybody has a wet snowman head like I do. So I'm going to give this a minute to dry, but we have a lot of the basic composition down, and you can see the similarities and the differences. Look at this between my original and the landscape version. I love both of them. I'm glad that we did something different. I'm glad I tried something different with the vertical or the horizontal because it looks really fun. So when you're ready with me, if your things are wet all over and you want to take a break from white, let's go ahead and jump into some red. Now putting red on black, unless you have a really high quality red paint, it's going to be really hard to cover the black. So I'm going to put the red with a little bit of white. So I have a little bit of white right here, and I'm going to mix a little bit of red and white together, just a touch. And this just gives it a little kind of bit of background base. And if it turns a little pinky, that's okay, because you can always do a second coat on top. So I just mixed a little bit of white paint with red. And I'm so excited to see your work, and I'm so glad that you're here with us. If you want to drop in the comments below if you're doing your vertical or if you're doing a horizontal, that would be so great to know along the way. And if anyone has any questions that come up throughout class, feel free to drop them in the comments below and I will respond to them as soon as I see them. But I'm going to fill in between these lines, and you can use a big brush or a small brush. And I'm going to do nice, smooth, horizontal lines. You can use any size brush that you're comfortable with. And if you need to retouch up your white, that's fine. But this is going to take 2 coats for the red hat, unless you have really thick white paint or thick red paint. You may even want to add more than that, but that's all right. All good. Now there's a lot of different ways of approaching painting. Yes, we could have outlined the hat first and not had the black background, but sometimes doing the background first is easier. So there's always 1,000 ways of doing things when you paint. And one thing I want you to have as a takeaway from any of these art classes is just you can pick and choose what you want to do. You'll learn from the work that you do. If my white is, a little messier on the edges, that's okay. We can go back in. You learn a lot of patience and give yourself a lot of grace when you paint. Mine's feeling pretty messy right now, but it's okay because I know I can go in and refine it. And you're going to paint on the interior of the hat as well. Now, one of the things I did in the original class was I kind of painted over some of these swirl lines because I can go right back over them with white paint, so that wasn't a big deal. So I'm painting over some of those, no problem. I'm gonna go nice and smooth. And again, I can do cleanup work with the rim of the hat and all that after. But doing some nice smooth brush strokes, getting on your first base coat of your red hat is a great place to be. Now, I love that the holidays are coming up, and this is a great winter inspiration, whether you're painting this just before the holidays or in any winter months. It's always fun to share holiday traditions with one another. And of course, being with family and friends is one thing, but we all have all these other spunky things that our family does, whether it's food related or games or get-togethers or matching Christmas jammies or ugly sweaters or whatever. All of our families have something, right? My mom hosts call her Sandy Claus, and she has like a big Christmas party every year for our family, and we play games. We call them reindeer games. And this was like before all those games came out on Pinterest. And she just loves, my mom was like the start of Pinterest before there was Pinterest, like, you know, when I was like 5 years old. She had all those fun, crafty games for us as kids. So it's always fun for the holidays. And my husband doesn't like it so much, but my sister and I love the humor and the creativity my mom has for our holiday reindeer games. I would love to hear if your family has anything fun or something you look forward to. Maybe it's just the time off. That's always a big thing. Maybe you get to paint more. We all have different things that we like to do during the holidays. And every year it can change, right? Like, let's acknowledge that. Some years are harder than others for certain reasons, and we just to be there for one another and just make the best of it. So I'm doing a second coat on my snowman's hat, and I'm just letting the hat dry because it's a little, there's brush strokes everywhere. It's kind of wet. So wherever you need to do second coats, you take your time. I'm cleaning off my brush, and I'm gonna attempt to do a second coat on another coat on my snowman's head. I had a little bit of bleeding, but we'll do our carrot and all that after. But once your area is dry, you can go back in and do the coats you need to. But it's just about having a little patience, letting a space drying, and then coming back to it. You want a white, bright snowman's head, and you want a bright, well-coated red hat for the inspiration tonight. That is what I recommend. And I love this inspiration. We had a great time in the live class. And I missed you. If you weren't at the live class, I'm glad that you're here watching the recording. And if you're ever interested in joining our live classes, I would encourage you to do so. They're really fun, really approachable. You don't have to show your video if you don't want to, but it's always fun seeing how other people do. We have lots of folks that show off their work throughout the class, but certainly no pressure there. But we typically get inspired from one another in those classes. But if you just want to follow along with our tutorials and along with our YouTube space, that's absolutely fine too. Otherwise, I'd warmly invite you to join our Patreon community. All right, so my snowman's head is pretty white and I'm happy with it. So I'm just going to let it dry. We are going to add a little bit of detail to the hat. So if you wanted to play around with the hat detail, I will show you how to add a little bit of shading to the hat. I'm going to come in, and I always love doing like little lines for the ribbon. This is a little bit, the red's a little bit wet here, but you can see you could do some lines here if you wanted to. If you want to let your hat dry first, that's fine. If you want to go over these swirls, if this area is dry, you could kind of go back in and streamline some of those swirls out. But we'll go back in. I'll show you how to do some shading on the inside of the red hat while we're here. So I'm going to take a little bit of my black paint and put it over here with my red. And we're going to create like a darker red color for like a shaded area. Now that's pretty dark, so you don't need it to be like that dark. So this is a pretty good in between. And on the right side of the hat, we're going to add in a little bit of shading. And if the red is still wet, that's okay. So on the right side of the hat, we're just going to do some gentle sweeps in with a really light hand. You could do a vertical line if you wanted to, and then you could do some gentle sweeps coming in. And you can see how it's adding a little bit of shade to this space. Now if it's still really wet, that's okay, but sometimes it's good when the colors can kind of blend together. Maybe I do a little bit of a darker rim on the outside of this red, but on the inside of the white. This is adding a little bit of shade, like where the inside of the hat might be a little more shady. And then on the inside of this J, you can outline the inside of this J with a darker red line. And this showcases that this is the inside of the hat, and it's definitely more, there's more of a shadow here. Now mine's wet, so it will dry, it'll be less shiny, but you can see some of the character that it's giving my hat. Again, it will be less shiny, but you can play with adding a little bit of that shade if you wish. So anywhere you want to work on these details, feel free. There's a little shade on the inside of my hat. If you want to get a little darker than that, you can. It's absolutely up to you. I'll show you what a little darker is. Mine's pretty wet, but I'll give it a go here. And in just a few minutes we'll do our nose, but take your time, go at your own speed. I'll go over some of these white lines again in just a minute, but I'm just going to let that dry. And if I need to do any touch-up on the white rim of the hat, just know you can always do that. No big deal. So take a few minutes, again, as things are drying, look around and see if you need to do any white coats anywhere else. So I can look on some of my swirls. Anywhere I might want to do a little bit of an extra white coat with a little bit of white paint. I'll show you another trick for our snowflakes. There's one additional step we can do, and then we'll do our carrot nose and our face next. But we'll just give a minute for things to dry and for you to play around with any of those details that are important for you. Okay. But what you can do is you can use the round end of the paintbrush. I'm going to mix a little bit of water, just a little bit, just to loosen up my white paint. Or you can use the round end of your brush or the tip of your brush. I will actually use the round end of my brush. So you can use the round end of the brush, and you can do little dots on the ends of your snowflakes. So you have little round circles. So I'm just dipping the round end of my brush in here, and I'm just doing little circles. And this is optional. If you don't want to do this, you don't have to. It just makes it look a little whimsical. There's so many different ways of doing snowflakes. This is just one really easy way that we selected for tonight. And this is a fairly easy inspiration. If we look at the gamut of classes that we do on our channel, we do a lot more complicated designs. This one's fairly simple. but I like to do a little bit of easy level 1 classes. I like to do some level 2s, but I always make our classes approachable for beginners. So I typically offer different suggestions and tips based on your level of like how you're comfortable. So just pick and choose what details you want to do in our classes, and you'll be in great shape. A lot of beginners that do really well, so don't ever be intimidated to join us again. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush, and I'm going to give everybody just another minute or two before we do our carrot. If you need more time, feel free to take that time, but we're going to do the carrot in just a minute. I'm just looking around just like you are, doing any second coats on my swirls or my loops, because we'll do our carrot next as a group. Now, most of my classes are about an hour and a half to 2 hours tonight, so it's pretty quick. But again, some of you may be taking your time and going a little bit more slow. That's no problem. Maybe I come and I do some outlining on my hat since I have my white in my hands. If you need to do more red, you can do more red. I'm just going to do some outlining on my hat. Since I think my red is okay, it's fine for right now. So I'm just going to do some outlining. It just makes your hat nice and clean again, because we all sometimes go over the lines, right? That's no big deal. Okay. Nice smooth brush strokes. And I can come in here and do these lines again. Again, mixing your brush with a little bit of water will help make your brush strokes a little bit more smooth, especially if you're trying any blending. I'd highly suggest it, trying it. There we go. So we're going to shift to the carrot. So whenever you're ready, you need a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red. So I have a little bit of yellow right here. So to make orange, it is yellow and a tiny touch of red. So you're bringing just a little bit of red into yellow. Too much red will make it too red. And you're going to find like a medium-sized style brush, a brush you have control over. A size 3, 4, or 5 round tip brush is perfect. So I have a little bit of red. I'm going to bring a little bit of red into my yellow. You can always bring more in. I'm going to make an orange, and you can decide what color you want your orange to be. But in these classes, you can start with your basic primary colors, and I always teach you how to mix and blend along the way. So if you ever have any questions about mixing or blending colors, definitely do not hesitate to ask. Use those comments below. Consider me a resource for you to help you on your journey as you are painting for yourself. If you are starting a business, if you are painting for fun, I'm here to support you. I've been an entrepreneur for over 15 years, and I've started many businesses, some art related, some not, and it's always a pleasure to support artists in your journey wherever you're at. So if there's anything I can help you with, please do not hesitate to ask. It's a great way for us to network and help one another out. All right, so I have a little bit of orange paint, and I'm going to do my nose. So you can do your nose by finding the center of your snowman and doing a line up and out. And you can determine how long you might want it to be. Now you want it to be fairly straight, but you can kind of change the shape. You can figure out how big you want it to be. It's more pointy on the end and it gets bigger towards the center of the head. It's kind of rounded. And you'll need a couple coats of paint, so just take your time. Nice smooth brush strokes for your edges. We'll add some detail to the carrot after. You may need to add a little bit of white paint or do a couple extra coats as your carrot is kind of over this black area, the black background. But I have some nice coverage going on. If you have good coverage, just stop painting it and let it dry, because if you keep kind of working at it, it could smudge. So give it a minute to dry. I'm going to put my brush down. I'm going to clean it off. While that's drying, I can do two small black dots for the eyes, which are right next to each other. They're right kind of in the middle of the head. So start small. You can always make them bigger. They're kind of beady little eyes, but you can pick and choose how big or small you might want them to be. There we go. I love how our eyes always get a little bit bigger every class, right? So I'm going to let them dry. And this is where, again, we did our nose, we're letting it dry. We did our eyes, we're letting those dry. Again, continue to look around and see if there's anywhere else you need to make additional second coats. So I can look at, let's see, I think my hat could use a little bit more outlining. If you're enjoying a beverage, maybe you made yourself some tea tonight, or if you want to grab a snack, feel free to do that. These classes always have you showing up, being yourself, wear your sweats, have your slippers on. Those are the best parts of these online classes, right? You can always have a friend join. You can have a friend over to watch the videos with you. You could join our weekly classes with friends or family. So many ways to paint for fun with it being not stressful. And I'm here to make this an enjoyable experience for you. If you wanted to do a more fancy ribbon on the hat, you can. Sometimes, oh, I have a little gold paint here. I could put a little gold on his hat if I wanted to. That could be fun. A little glitter is always really fun too. Take a look around. Really, we're just doing second coats. We're letting the nose dry and the eyes dry because we're going to do some more detail on the nose in just a minute. So I'm just looking at some of my snowflakes that might need a second coat of white paint. And in my classes, we have a mindful approach to art. And what that means is that I'm going to encourage you to pause and reflect on your artwork throughout the class. It'll allow you to notice things and slow down for you to make additional adjustments and updates as you go. So I'm going to come in, if my nose is sort of dry, I'm going to come in and just do a second coat. But we're going to add some detail to the nose in just a minute. So get 2 coats of paint on that nose, on that carrot if you can. And I'm going to do a second coat of black on my eyes as well. All depends on how much paint you use, if it's thick, if it's this or that. So I did 2 coats on my nose. I'm just going to let it dry for right now. Sometimes if it's really wet, you can kind of get a hair dryer. There's a couple more details we'll do on the hat together as we're letting our nose dry. I am going to take a little bit of black paint and do a little bit more black on my eyes so they're really dark black in color. And then what an additional detail you can do with black paint is you can put a black line at the top of the red hat, but under the white area, you can do a thin black line. I'll do it. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. Always in these classes, you have a choice. And then under the J of the inside of the hat, you can do a black line as well. So kind of outlining the underside of the J. We'll draw the eye of the beholder to the inside of the hat. And I'm just playing with adding one here too, just to see if it helps. Yeah, it's up to you. I'm not going to add too much black anywhere else, but sometimes, I think on the original I added one here above the ribbon. But it's up to you. You don't have to add black anywhere else if you don't want to. If you wanted to outline your hat with a nice black line, like the entire hat, to make the edges really crisp, that would be something to consider. Like the white edges really crisp, doing a black outline. Just adds a little bit of extra. So again, we're letting our nose dry. That's why I'm doing the black right now. So I did a little bit of black around the top of the hat. Nice. And then while we have the black paint in our hand, we're going to add a black outline around the carrot. Now you can start wherever you want, but with a small brush and a light hand, you can add in a little bit of detail, a little bit of outlining around the carrot. Maybe you want to reshape the carrot a little bit. Go back and get a little bit more black paint. You can add a little detail. If your carrot is still wet, that's okay. And again, I encourage you to like this video if you haven't already, or if you can subscribe. By subscribing and liking my video, it actually will promote the content on YouTube to other people like yourself who might want to participate in our classes. So appreciate any of your support by subscribing and liking this video. And again, I would love to see you again soon. So I hope you're enjoying today's experience. I just did some black outlining on the nose there. And once that's dry, we're going to do a little bit of white on the interior. And this class is really, you do as much or as little as you wish. So any additional details you want to add to the hat, any additional details you want to add to the nose, feel free to do that. But a little bit of white paint, I'm going to mix a little bit of water here just to loosen it up. You can do a little bit of gentle white outlining on the inside of the black. So this is just a little bit of a highlighted pop on the nose itself. So you can really just go on the inside of all the black areas. And if it kind of blends in with the orange, that's okay. Just kind of like a little snow, a little bit of a glow. But again, I encourage you to take as much or as little time as you need for today's class. I will go ahead and I'll show you the original. So there's the Let It Snow, the vertical version, and then there is mine for tonight. I love both of them. I love that the nose colors are different. Look at that. This one's a little lighter. That's a little bit more orange carrot. This is more of a baby carrot color. My hats are fairly similar. I added a little bit more extra white paint up there. So you can pick and choose, any additional characteristics that you might want to add. But most importantly, I hope that you're enjoying yourself. With tonight's class, you're welcome to spend another 15, 20 minutes or even another hour if you really want to dial in your details. But I hope that you had a great time, and I want to thank you so much for joining. If you're new here, again, my name is Megan, and I hope to see you again soon. And please be sure to use the comments below if I can help you with any questions. But until then, have a great night, and I'll see y'all again soon.